This week's episode is about you got an injury, had a chemical leak, you had an event. What do you do afterwards? What's the steps?
Yeah, what happens next if you are expecting a regulatory visit? This week, like we said in the opener, we're talking about we had some kind of catastrophic event. So whether it be an injury,
Chemical leak.
chemical event, something like that, significant property damage that would require an agency to come in and do some kind of an investigation. What does that process look like?
For those you don't know us and are new to our channel, we spend about half our year doing this process.
Yep.
So myself especially, that is my main job the last few years
Yep.
is dealing with these events afterwards in sequence. So the first thing you have to have some kind of plan.
Yep.
And the plan should be determined before you ever had the event. You
Yes,
should
so-
say, this is what we're going to do in case these 5 things happen.
Right. So typically we see maybe a couple page document that just outlines here's our process from the time that agency or that entity shows up on property. What are we doing with them? What does it look like once they arrive through security? How should we be talking to them? What credentials are we asking for? Those are some of the things that we would want to see in that specific document.
And everybody should have some kind of plan for that. This main episode now is what's next. All right, so here we go.
Yeah.
So now we have agencies showed up. We've had maybe some litigation, maybe we haven't, but we've got to try to fix this.
Yeah.
Did we fix it in 15 minutes from now or 6 months from now? Well, we're supposed to do it in 15 minutes. Even though the agencies
Theoretically.
may take some time, even though they made an investigation, you don't want to repeat right off the bat.
Yeah.
So you want to have some kind of system that says, when we have an event, what are we going to do? You could have a chemical leak and we don't have 8 hours to wait. We're doing something every 15 minutes.
Well, and I think the interesting part to kind of tack onto that is the regulatory agencies or the entities that come in and do the inspection, they are not really allowed to give you solutions or ideas.
Right.
So they come in and here's your list of things that you need
We think are
to
wrong.
fix or
Yeah.
work on or whatever that looks like that you have to address in some capacity. And now you've got a management team that maybe didn't identify that those were even risks or hazards. And now they're going to have to come up with a solution on how to deal with it. And so that can be really challenging.
It is. And it's not that we get a lot of calls during the time we do, but it's the part of we had a great safety record for years.
Yeah.
And we had no leaks. And so the same system, the same processes you've used to make sure you say, hey, we're doing great. Now I had a hiccup or a fail. Now
And we never saw it coming,
Yeah,
obviously.
so now
otherwise we would have addressed it.
Yeah, you can't use the systems you had in place because they don't work now. Something's
Yeah.
off. So now you have to evaluate what the off is and what the anomaly is and try to address. And that's hard for a lot of people to do.
It is hard, especially when you're working in that same environment. You're very programmed almost that, well, this is how we do things. And so it becomes hard to be creative outside of that. It's almost the same reason why when you write anything.
Like
you
any of our documents. All of our documents are reviewed by someone else in our company.
Right. For the same reason. You have
Yeah.
typically an editor that would review and make suggestions. It's a third party that kind of is a blank screen
Yep.
viewing it because it can be a challenge when you're in it every day, all day,
Absolutely.
for hours, for years maybe, to come up with a creative solution.
And that solution's got to
outside
work.
of the box.
And it's got to work next month and in 6 months and in a year. It can't be something we just temporarily put in place because the gap or the problem is sitting there waiting. And you want to get rid of that problem completely.
Right. So I think that that's the next piece that we want to talk about too is so there's a sequence of events when you come up with these solutions. So you're going to have temporary fixes.
Right.
You're
What are
gonna
we going to
have-
do the next 8 hours to 6 days?
Yep. And then what can we start putting into place to start making that a more permanent solution?
Right.
So you have the next 10 minutes, how do we address it? Next week, how do we address it? In 30 days, 6 months,
Absolutely. And
1
they cannot be
year.
the same plan. They got to
Yep.
be different. So
So-
like when we get involved with some of these, sometimes it's that day, sometimes it is 2 months later. And that's what I talk about. So let's put plans together. So maybe you've got a lockout issue or a forklift issue or some kind of event that's part of this litigation or injury or leak, whatever it is. What you got to look at is you got initial, did you do it correctly? Then you got annual training. Then you got revalidation. And if you don't watch it, your list gets so big
It
that
really
you don't know
snowballs.
really what to do. So now your biggest gap is how do I prioritize? You've got to be able to
You've got to
prioritize not just timelines, but which of this massive list that everyone's saying I may have to fix, how am I going to prioritize which one do I do? And then how
Yeah.
much of number 8 do I do? do I do 1 through 40 or do a number 8 could actually take months and I can
Yep.
only do bits and pieces of it as I go through.
So let's talk about a real life scenario in that. So what I'm thinking immediately when I think of multipliers, I'm thinking of things like lockout procedures, confined space assessments,
Absolutely.
and SOPs
That's
from
a
the PSM side.
yes.
So all of those. So you may take a citation or something along those lines, and you may get several, and maybe they're all serious.
Sure.
So like you talked about, how do you prioritize
I could have
out of all of
800
them that are serious?
I could have 800 lockouts and I'm like, okay, tomorrow they're all a problem maybe, but how do I
But
do
we don't
number
know.
1?
Yeah. So first thing, maybe we had an injury. Somebody comes in. We know we have to address that, but we also have to do training. We also have
That's
to
correct.
change our lockout. What else is affected? Is there anything else in this system that could also be sitting there as a risk that could be a problem?
That's correct. So what I tell people to do is, and we're going to do solutions to this episode, but one of the things I tell people to do is anytime you set up your system, the initial part of this
Mhm.
podcast
Yep.
is setting up a system. I always set it up like you had a failure.
Yeah.
And then that's how I test myself.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, we had a forklift event, or okay, we had a chemical leak, or we had an injury. Now, what would be all the things that would be supporting documents going to that?
Supporting
and
documents and supporting training.
And then can I find them? Can I
Yep.
find them in 4 hours? Can I validate? Is Joe the one that did it, but he quit 8 months ago, and he's the one that did all the stuff, but now the new people have no idea where it is, or even
Yeah, the
what it is.
training. Or
With
maybe he was the program keeper. Or maybe he
Yeah.
was the one that reviewed the annual assessment is for
Absolutely.
the employees.
There's a list
for
of
the
stuff you got to
lockout.
do annually,
Yep.
and they get
Yep.
lost sometimes with the turnover and everything
They
else.
do.
So on Saturdays, once a month, we bring in a contractor that does this service for us. Maybe it's hot work,
Yeah.
and they come in to do hot work. Well, you've got to look at your system differently for contractors. Then if you're doing hot work, then there's your contractors doing normal work. So
Well,
you got to look at your systems.
And that's a really great thing too, because you may have something that was not a contractor event. However, if it's something like a confined space assessment, an SOP, or a
It could
lockout
affect a
procedure,
contractor
it
easily.
could affect a contractor. So
Yeah.
now you're looking at your contractor programs and systems and how you communicate the changes, the updates that you're making with that group that makes sense too.
Absolutely. So that's the biggest thing we're looking for. We're looking for, you have an event, you have some kind of agency or maybe regulatory something come in. Now you got to have some kind of plans on, you're going to fix it. You're going to get together a temporary fix, a 6 month, 8 month, year, and then you got to look at any fix that you put into place. Don't fix anything that you can't really do. You got to
Yeah.
run your business. Every
Yeah.
plant, every business has its own uniqueness. You still have to make it unique. It's not
Yeah.
it's not fix the electric cord that's bad. It's what
Why did
says
it
so
get
no more
ripped
electric
out?
cords get tore apart.
Yeah,
Right.
why is it getting ripped out to begin with? Let's
Right.
address whatever that looks like. So I think what you're really trying to say is when we're putting systems in place or permanent corrective actions, let's make sure there's something that we can realistically do given our business and what we know we do day in and day out. That
Absolutely.
it's not going to be a problem for for us for food safety or sanitation or whatever that looks like. That it's something real. It's not just an astronomical number that is going to be a budgetary issue over time that we can't. And I understand we're not supposed to say, oh, we can't do that fix because of cost.
We're not going to change the compressor in tomorrow.
But
It's there.
there is a
So,
myriad of different options, and so let's pick one that makes sense financially also if we have choices.
and that's the kind of getting to the end here. Is that's the other part now. Now you got to budget out your finances.
Yep.
You got to say, all these items cost $20, but if I add them all up, they could be $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So now I spend most of my time on the risk side. So yes,
Yep.
I look at timelines on a plan and what I can do realistically.
Severity and how many people
Now-
infected is
now
usually
that-
a
yes,
key
now I'm
item.
back to that severity and what is that risk level going to be
Yep.
that matrix, and then that's how I move my funding to what part of the 8 months do I start first.
Yeah.
And you know what? You may have had an idea and it didn't work right. Big deal.
Yep.
Come up with another one, put a new strategy in place, and try that out. But you got to test it for how you're going to run your business when you're doing these
Well,
systems.
and I think another key item too is that you're going to have potentially additional visits from that regulatory
Absolutely.
agency. So I think it's really critical that you document
all what you're doing,
everything
Yeah.
that you're doing, what works, what
Yep.
maybe didn't, but you're still trying. You've got to show intent. So let's get credit for the efforts that we are putting in because we know they're
Absolutely.
there, and let's make sure that gets documented so that we can show that.
And I tell everybody always do percentage.
Yeah.
Don't say I've got to fix 7,000 IDs or 7,000 SOPs. I did all of this room 100%.
Yep.
I got 20%
Room
of this
one.
room done. I got 30% of break it down that you're showing you're trying.
Yep.
Whether the investigation is done or not does not matter. You want to show that you're trying to do the
Yeah,
right thing.
I wouldn't wait until the end results, I guess, is the
That's
biggest thing.
correct.
So from the time that you get your
Initial.
information or the
Yeah.
walkthrough and you're kind of aware of what's going on and what some of the opportunities are, let's start working on that so that the
Absolutely.
next visit we can show that intent and that improvement. And like you say, let's show it in percentages of we are making an effort. So it's not, well, it's not all done, so it's zero. No, part of it is done.
Correct.
20%,
You can't fix
50%.
500 or 5,000 without doing 10 and 20.
That's right.
And you
That's right.
you want to take credit for that. So that initial part of getting the plan, that's what this whole episode is about. Think about all these pieces of the puzzle that move.
Yep.
And we don't ever want to have an event happen, but things happen. So let's plan. And then you know what happens when you look at the puzzle that way, you help find your gaps. Because like Jen said, the biggest problem you have is you did great on your audits. You had no injuries. You're so great at everything. You got to go back and test your systems. You got to see, will it make it through the shifts and the contractors, and
the turnover and everything else. Well, and I think the last thing that I would say is that you can also, in some of your programs on how you're going to manage this, look at your EAP and say, if we had this event actually happen, who would we call to help us from the safety side? If we had a medical event, if we had a severe injury, who would we call to help us work through this and navigate it? Typically, OSHA wants to see a third party if it's severe enough. And so we would want to start working on identifying that. So maybe you've got some vendors in place. I would start asking some questions. If we have a bad chemical leak, can we call you? 24/7
it can be your attorneys
at
because
night.
people have different attorneys.
Do you have an attorney? If we have a severe medical injury or incident, is there someone that we know that we can call? A lot of companies have an entity like that. We are that entity for lots of facilities. We know that there are some folks out there that do that. So you might even want to start identifying what that looks like and who that would be, either for your region, your country, whatever that may be.
Absolutely.
And just start identifying some of those resources so you can pick up the phone and have that. It's not, I start my research from now when everything's chaotic and going crazy.
It's how you run your business. You want to run your business thinking that you never have to use that system, but if it happens, you still want to run your business right.
Right.
Keep your risk down, run your business, take care of your customers, and make sure your clients aren't unhappy because supply chain issues.
Well, there is that fact of it too. It becomes difficult to fix things if we lose customers too. So now we're in that weird catch-22. So.
Absolutely. So that's where we're at today. Remember, these are our opinions.
They are just our opinions based on our ideas, our experiences. So take it for what it's worth. Do your thorough risk assessment. Every situation is slightly different. That's why we provide on-site consultation. We don't do any of this type of work over the phone. So I'd highly encourage you that if you need some advice, to reach out to somebody, us or somebody, and have them come and do a site visit. And then if you want to kind of have some more information on how to do that risk determination, we do have some resources over at allensafetycoaching.com. The particular risk matrix and how to navigate through any audit findings, that's actually for free. So you can use that resource over there and get access to that without having to pay for anything. We put that out there just kind of as an aid to help you if you need that. So go check that out, allensafetycoaching.com. Otherwise, if you do want some on-site resources, allen-safety.com is where you can find all of the services we provide, including this one, until after catastrophic events, and you can reach out to us from there. Otherwise, contact us on any of the socials. At Allen Safety LLC is our handle. You can reach out Joe Allen, Jen Allen on LinkedIn and talk to us there and direct message us there if you've got questions. And otherwise, leave a comment, leave a like. We love hearing from you guys. Let us know what you want to hear about. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Safe, Efficient, Profitable, a worker safety podcast. If you're looking for more in-depth discussions or step-by-step solutions on all of the different safety and regulatory topics, please visit us at www.allensafetycoaching.com for web-based virtual coaching and training, or at www.allen-safety.com to book our team for on-site services, training sessions, to order merchandise, to learn more about our team and what services we provide in the field, or just simply to request a topic for us to cover on our next podcast. If you found today's podcast helpful and would like to support our podcast further, please help us by subscribing, liking, and sharing this podcast with anyone that could benefit from the information we cover here, as that helps us to continue to put out this free content. Thank you so much for your support.